The Milking Devon cow is a marvel that's thousands of years in the making. There are just no other cattle out there that can do as much as they can. Dairy, beef, and oxen, Devons do it all, and they do it to the highest degree. And besides all of the excellent products they bring to the table, the Devons bring rich history too. Just about every major society in the last 3,000 years have utilized them in some way or another. So let's get on this cart that rode in all the way from the Bible, made a stop with the fearsome Vikings, they went to Rome, and finally came to rest with the Pilgrims in the United States. So let's meet the Devon and all of the marvelous gifts they bring with them. The Devon milking cow is reputed to be the oldest breed of cattle in the world. The first official recording of them was 2,000 years ago when the Romans invaded England. By that time, they'd been around for so long that they were just a part of society, and no one could remember the time when they first came, nor were there even stories left that were passed over by word of mouth anymore. Most likely, the very cattle we read about in the Bible were their earliest ancestors. When the ancients first built big ships and started bringing their livestock with them, some of them found new homes around the northern African, Asian, and European coasts. We know that the Scandinavians and Arabs knew of each other and traded as early as the 1st century. So the likelihood of Arabic cattle reaching other European nations besides the Vikings and Romans is all but a certainty. This ability to lay down their hooves on new lands would play a pivotal role in the early days of the Americas and the pioneers that went out to seek places to settle down in. But we'll get back to that leg of our little history lesson in just a second. As they spread, those original cattle had a few thousand years to play with their genetics. They adapted to the environments they stayed behind in, and the people there bred them selectively to have the traits that they desired. But the Devons that landed on the coasts of Devonshire, Cornwall, and Somerset in England remained stable in their genetics until this very day. The only thing that really changed with the passage of time is that their thousands of years around humans made them even more trusting and docile than any other cattle breed in existence. And the reason for their stable genetic condition is simply that they were so adept at checking every single box that cattle could possibly mark that there just wasn't any need for this line of ancient cattle to change and adapt like the rest needed to. They were already perfect. Devons do it all: work, meat, and milk. The bulls perform better than any other cattle on the field, even the ones bred specifically for working purposes. They could pull heavier loads, do it faster, and handle the work without tiring out as fast as the rest. And the cows gave their communities all of the rich, high-quality milk that they needed. Strong, prolific, and valuable, they were as integrated into society as the people that they served. Despite the breed's incredibly long time with humans, there's actually very little documentation of them. Devons were just so commonplace by the time record-keeping came into fashion that their prominence and sheer numbers made them easy to overlook as the commoner's cow. Fast forward to the 1600s and the discovery of the Americas. The first settlers needed animals to sustain them, and they needed the brute force that oxen had to plow fields, carry loads, and pull carts. In 1623, 2 heifers and 1 bull were brought over from England to the Plymouth colony. They were the first official livestock to be brought across the seas. The choice of which animal to send was an easy one. The arrival of the New World needed as much as possible from an animal: milk, meat, and the ability to plow through virgin soils to set up the farmlands that could feed them. The Devons were the most adaptable and mild-mannered livestock that could possibly be put on the ships and survive the journey without being stressed to death from the voyage. And they also came with the invaluable ability to live off forage alone. There just weren't any farmlands to grow food for the livestock yet, but the Devons took care of that issue. They were put to work to lay down the first fields for planting, and they continued to do so for hundreds of years after that. They just adapted marvelously, and everyone that came after those at the Plymouth colony has used the Devons since then. And they didn't just help set up and feed small communities that were springing up everywhere. These oxen laid the first roads and carried the materials needed for the first buildings. If anything or anyone deserves recognition for building an entirely new nation, it's the Devons. The herds that still reside in the state of Connecticut are the direct descendants of those original herds that were established 400 years ago. You can even take a ride on the oxen-drawn carts that are so popular on the fairgrounds or just swing by a farm. The Devons are still very much a part of Connecticut's bones, even if there aren't that many of them left now. The exploration of the Missouri River and eventually the events that led to the Oregon Trail were possible because of the Devon oxen that pulled the wagons and laid out the entire path from beginning to end. They were the only cattle that could scale the rocky terrain and survive the extreme conditions they sometimes found themselves in. Now, you'd think that such a diverse breed would be numbering in the millions even today, but the reality is that, like most of the rare breeds we cover on this channel, the massive production heights that the US was racing towards in the 1900s saw many breeds suffer as a result. Heavy machinery took the Devons' work out from under them, and no matter how good their milk and meat were, there are other breeds that can give you more, even if those massive animals' products don't come with the same quality. Cattle, especially, were kept for one purpose at a time, and they were bred to excel at only that one thing. If you wanted beef, they were bred to be as big as possible. If you want milk, well, a cow needs to provide gallons upon gallons at a time. It became a question of feeding the masses, not so much about the quality or how talented an animal was in various fields. There was a significant push to breed the Devons to be bigger and more suitable for beef cattle, but that would come at the price of reducing the quality and quantity of their dairy. A new offshoot, the Beef Devon, sometimes called the Red Devon, came from that experimentation. But a few farmers in New England stuck their wellies in the ground and stood firm in their beliefs that the original Devons should not be discarded just for the sake of bigger production. They banded together and made sure that the original stock was kept away from those breeding programs, keeping their draft and milking capabilities intact. Their insistence on keeping the Devons away from factory farming is probably the biggest contributor to the fact that they're still around at all. Many other breeds disappeared entirely after they were swallowed up by the industrial era, purely for the sake of getting as much as possible from a single animal. Today, they are still used on a small handful of farms that don't make use of tractors and large machinery, and they're a popular choice for homesteaders. But for the most part, Devons are a show animal, usually paraded for their historical background and as a dramatic addition at fairs, historical conventions and such. This value on the stage, the national pride that comes with deep historical roots, and the actions of the New England farmers are what saved them from going extinct in the US altogether. There are 500 purebred registered heads in the United States today, and quite a few hundred unregistered Devons speckle the nation. There are less than 3,000 of them left in Britain, and they are currently labeled as critically endangered by the Livestock Conservancy organization. Devons can range anywhere from 1,100 pounds to 1,600 pounds, with bulls weighing in on the higher end of that scale. This puts them into the medium cattle category. They can make up their nutritional needs entirely with forage, and they don't need any additional feed unless it's in the very heart of winter. Even the poorest foraging conditions don't hinder them all that much. Devons are experts at finding what they need in even the harshest environments. They do just fine in warmer climates, but they have been mostly reserved for the states that get heavy snowfall in winter. Either way, the Devons have held up well. They never quite made it to the tropical regions of South America, and there are no definitive records of them in the Everglades. But then again, places like Florida always favor breeds that are unusually resistant to parasites. But with the inoculations today, the creepy crawlies and tropical diseases shouldn't be too hard to manage for cattle that are as well known as the Devons for being hardy and disease-resistant. Cows will give you anywhere between 4 and 6 gallons of milk a day with an average of 4% butterfat. They are one of the top 5 dairy breeds in the US, both for their quantity as well as the quality of their dairy. They are often compared to the Jerseys, and they are probably the best milking cattle in the US overall. They have very good birth survival rates, and that's due to how unusually small their calves are at birth. Don't worry about that size, though. Those babies grow so fast that they'll have caught up by the time that they're weaned from their mothers. And when it comes to their working capabilities, it's not just the fact that they are strong and fast that makes them so valuable. Devons are incredibly intelligent. This intelligence makes it possible to train them on the cart, halter, and plow. They adhere to schedules very well, even if they can get a little annoyed with you if you veer off their usual timetable, even in the slightest. These cows memorize your routines, and they're cheeky enough to keep you on time. That intelligence can come at a price, though, just like it is with highly intelligent pigs. The more brains an animal has, the more cheeky they can become. Devon's natural inclination to be relaxed and mild-mannered offsets this somewhat, but it's easy to spoil such a bright animal too much. Keep them in the pasture where they belong, because raising them as a pet will lead to a very large and strong creature that can be a handful to control if they're throwing a tantrum. The Devon's docile nature is completely dependent on the relationship they have with their owners. If you take care of them well and give them every reason to trust that you will never lead them into dangerous or stressful situations, you'll have the best and easiest cattle you could possibly want. But if their care is not sufficient, they just won't build the trust with you that you want. You'll have a very big and willful animal on your hands. Devons that come from previously neglectful conditions are notoriously difficult to rehabilitate. Like people, they don't appreciate it if you break their trust. With Devons, it's all about creating balance, and that requires mindfulness of their needs. If Devons are left to feed themselves with forage, their beef will be beautifully marbled and just delicious, but they can very quickly become obese when they are fed with grain. Besides a little supplementation in the winter, there is no need to give them grain at all when the grass is high. If they do pick up too much weight, it will drastically reduce the quality of their dairy and their beef. And like any heritage breed, no matter what the species, their growth rate will be slower and more even than other cattle that are usually reared for beef production. They are not factory animals at all. In all ways, Devons were meant for the open air. As hardy as they are, their health will decline very rapidly if they are squeezed against each other. Even penning them in quarters that are too small will have detrimental effects on their overall well-being. In our opinion, Devons are absolutely perfect for land where the farmers are on the ground and involved with their livestock themselves, in a place that has grass and human hands to interact with them. Ideal for small holdings, yet still productive enough to hold their own on the big market. There's no reason that they should be in the background in exchange for less quality and the poor health that comes with mega production operations. We say bring the Devons back. They've been here for humans for thousands of years, and they have every right to be here for thousands of years more. And what do you say? Are you in agreement that this ancient and proud breed of cattle is long overdue for a comeback, or maybe you've even had a herd yourself? Please tell us about your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. If you like this video and want more like it, don't forget to like and subscribe before you leave, or stick around for a few minutes more by checking out some of our other videos that are on your screen right now. Until next time, bye.